everyone, and welcome to Remodel Minority. I'm Madeline.
And I'm Cindy.
Hi, I'm Jalyn.
I'm Shreya.
And I'm Carter. Welcome back to our channel.
In this episode, we're going to talk about feminism's lack of intersectionality. But first, we'll start with our own definitions of what it means to be a feminist. Who wants to start?
I'd love to start. So, my definition of feminism has definitely evolved, and we all continue to do so. But right now, I think that feminism is supporting the equality of the sexes. To me, this includes men and women, cis and trans people, white people and people of color, everyone. To be a feminist means to respect people equally and fight for political and cultural changes that discriminate based on gender and help empower marginalized voices in the process.
I agree, Jalyn, especially with respecting everyone. I also think that it's especially important that being a feminist means you want equality for everyone, regardless of anything.
I like both of your points, and for me, I define a feminist as first, you believe that people should be treated equally, by law and by society. Second, I think that a feminist doesn't require that other women be feminists. Like Emma Watson said, feminism is not a stick which to beat other women with. And third, you lift all people up, regardless of gender, including those who don't identify as a woman. Ultimately, feminism is about liberation and choice.
Personally, I believe my definition of feminism to be legal and social equal rights for men, women, and everyone in between are outside of that.
I love all the definitions that everyone stated, and for me, a feminist is someone who supports and fights for the equality of all people, regardless of sex or gender, and also regardless of socioeconomic status, ability, sexual orientation, and other factors.
I think everyone gave really great personal definitions of feminism, but I think we should also address what mainstream feminism looks like and talk about how it's different from our individual beliefs.
I agree, that's a great idea. Does anyone have a good definition for mainstream feminism?
When I think about white feminism or mainstream feminism, I believe that it's a form of feminism that focuses on the struggles of ideal white women.
Yes, and by focusing on the struggles of only ideal white women, it ignores the distinct forms of oppression that women of color face.
Mainstream feminism makes it difficult for women of color to progress as easily as white women. For example, the suffrage movement of the 1920s prominently featured white women. And although there were many black suffragettes, they're left out of the narrative, and they don't really get access to the vote until the Voting Rights Act and Civil Rights era of the 1960s. This historical example shows that feminism is not a one-size-fits-all approach, where the default is still a body of a white woman.
So what beauty standards exist for the female body?
One thing I've noticed is the concept of size. Fat shaming only scratches the surface. It's shaming women for having curves, cellulite, and certain facial features. Even curvy women don't necessarily fit in with what society deems as the perfect hourglass shape. Think Kim Kardashian. As a youth, seeing social media trends and things like Facetune, Photoshop, and Instagram filters have definitely made me struggle with self-esteem issues.
Western standards of beauty are part of a scheme to market to women their insecurities, like skin lightening creams in Asian cultures and hair texture changing products for Black women. The industry profits off women and girls who feel like their bodies aren't enough the way they are, forcing them to buy more and more products like makeup, clothes, and more.
These standards don't also only exist for women, although they are prevalent there. Pressure on men to have perfect abs, chiseled jawlines, and thick hair definitely exists. Mainstream feminism doesn't only shame other women, they can also shame men for their bodies.
A good way to look at this is by asking yourself before you comment on someone else's appearance, could this person change this part of their look in 5 minutes or less? It's acceptable to compliment someone's shoes or tell them they have food stuck in their teeth. But it's not acceptable to comment on someone's weight, physical features, or anything like that. Everyone should be celebrated for their differences and choose how they want to express themselves.
Mainstream feminists need to take into consideration that not everyone has the same physical features, and that physical appearance is not how important in how much respect you should give a person. Their value is not tied to how they look. It seems like such a simple concept that should be easy to understand for people who preach self-love, but don't love others at the same time.
I think at one point in my life, I used to refer to feminists as the F word because I felt like feminists didn't actually want equality for all, but rather just for white women. And as an Asian American, it was really apparent to me how much they didn't want me to be included in the conversation about inequality.
I think overall the movement has become more intersectional, or has tried to, but I've seen a lot of so-called feminists do some questionable things in the name of equality.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Remember TERFs?
Trans-exclusionary radical feminists?
That's the one. It's interesting to me how they call themselves feminists.
What do they do?
TERFs are a feminist group that are essentially anti-transgender. Robin Morgan, a famous TERF, has said, and I quote, "I will not call a male she. 32 years of suffering in this androcentric society and of surviving have earned me this title woman." It's an interesting outlook when she considers herself a feminist.
Oh, so her viewpoint is basically that since men have it easy in the world, even if they identify as a woman, they're still a man. And so her stance is that a transgender woman will never really truly understand what it means to be a woman.
So I think it's weird that people consider trans women not women. I read something online that summarized my thoughts here exactly. Transphobic feminists only see women as this concept defined by biology, which is basically admitting to seeing women as nothing more than reproductive organs. Definitely a pretty sexist attitude to have. So to me, being a woman is just simply someone who wants to identify as a woman, regardless of their gender assigned at birth. I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on what it means to be a woman, because I think it's an important discussion to have.
To me, being a woman is so much more than my anatomy and DNA, and there are no characteristics or emotions required to be a woman. To me, being a woman is just one way I identify myself, and I believe that every person has a different idea of what it means to be a woman, and that no one is right or wrong for identifying as one.
I agree. I think that being a woman is much more than just biology. And I actually think that's almost the purpose of the feminist movement, to understand that we as people shouldn't need to be discriminated based on our bodies or our biology.
Well, that's what TERFs don't believe in. They think it's all biology. I find it more of a excuse for their, transphobia. Strange of them to describe themselves as feminist, though.
It's a weird concept to want equality for all and still exclude people. Why can't we just be respectful of each other's experiences and differences? Oh my gosh, that reminds me of the side effects from the Free the Nipple movement.
Free the nipple was so interesting.
What exactly was it?
Well, essentially, Free the Nipple was trying to destigmatize the female nipple due to partially the strict social media guidelines around women pictures that would show their nipple, even if they were just wearing a shirt. It ended up being just a bunch of mainstream feminists taking pictures, just barely passing the guidelines, and pressuring others to do the same thing.
Huh. I understand the idea, but they would try to pressure others to follow suit?
Yeah, some feminists would even attack other women online for not participating.
Wow, that's harsh. It seems to me that despite this new wave of feminism becoming more inclusive, many feminists don't exactly seem to understand the cultural and personal belief differences between women. Around the world, many cultures value and view modesty as beautiful and trending, almost. It seems like some of these feminists forget there's more than just Western culture.
I find it really interesting how feminism is supposed to be all about inclusivity and equal rights, but a lot of them, especially white feminists, forget all about the other women and girls around the world.
Definitely. For example, in Asia, conservatism isn't seen as old-fashioned or anything but just the social norm. And even outside of Asia and in other cultures, like African cultures, etc., conservatism isn't oppressive, but just how they like to dress and feel comfortable doing so. Obviously, cultural norms and how you grow up will affect what you think looks nice and feel most confident in.
Another source of conservatism is, of course, religion. Religion is often the reason why chastity, abstinence, and modesty are valued, and these values often transfer over into clothing. However, mainstream feminism often views women who dress religiously modestly as backward and self-oppressive.
I know what you mean. It's seen as being prudish to cover up, but honestly, some people are just more comfortable that way, and they shouldn't be forced to change. Is there a laugh reaction for that pun?
I agree that dressing modestly because of religion shouldn't be something that we look down upon people for, because everyone has different comfort levels with their body and their style of dress. If those religious values make people dress more modestly and make them feel more comfortable, then we should all be okay with that.
I know that in some religions, modesty is so valued that they cover their head, like the hijab.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure there are many other head coverings that aren't the hijab or burqa or strictly related to Islam.
You would be correct, Cindy. Time for a quick head coverings lesson. So, in some sects of Christianity, such as the Mennonites or the Amish, the bonnet is worn. In some sects of Judaism, the tihil and yarmulke is worn. In Sikhism, the dastar is common. And when some Hindu women enter the temple, they cover their head with a scarf to pray. This is to say that all religions value modesty in some form or another, and mainstream feminism shouldn't exclude that.
And yet it does. I'm sure we've all heard those stories about people ripping hijabs off of women or telling Muslim women that they don't have to wear that anymore, viewing their head coverings as signs of xenophobic and sexist notions of terrorism and extremism.
And recently, more and more feminists have been arguing that people should ban the burqa.
I've read these articles too. They say that a burqa erases a woman and it's inherently oppressive, but an article of clothing can't be inherently anything, right? It's the instrumental use of it, which makes it oppressive or liberating. For example, in the US, the hijab is seen as an empowering choice against the backdrop of rising Islamophobia, but in Iran, where the hijab is mandatory with the punishment of jail if not worn, it's seen as oppressive. And so is taking away the right to choose. And if you ask me, feminism was based on the right to choose.
Agreed. Being able to choose is so important.
I know! Although I think it goes both ways, because there are those who are forced to dress modestly, saying it's honorable, or through community/family pressure, which is oppressive. But if you force someone to not dress modestly or not have that right, then that is also oppression. Ultimately, it just comes down to letting people choose how they want to dress.
Exactly. But mainstream feminism doesn't realize that you can be a hijabi feminist, or be a feminist wearing modest and unrevealing clothing. See, it lacks religious intersectionality, as well as cultural intersectionality. Even women who don't wear head coverings and dressed in modest clothing are told to be revealing, or that a true feminist is comfortable with their body. But everyone should be comfortable to their own extent, and that doesn't make any one of them less of a feminist.
Well, I think we have learned a lot of new information about feminism, and hopefully some of these new perspectives will make people more aware of how feminism can and should be more intersectional.
Yeah, I definitely think of feminism as a more inclusive and intersectional approach, because no one person in the world can truly be free when women around the world are oppressed, which means that we need changes in how we view feminism in the United States.
Exactly. Intersectionality is a core part of making feminism more inclusive by acknowledging other forms of discrimination, such as race, age, socioeconomic status, gender, religion, and physical and mental ability that can pose additional barriers to women.
We'll see you next time for Remodel Minority. Bye!